Welcome to Day 9, Horror Fam, and tonight's theme is a real thriller. It's We Better Call the Cops! Get ready for some seriously unsettling stories where things go so wrong that we need the cops. These tales will have you double-checking your locks and looking over your shoulder. We're diving headfirst into terrifying situations where danger is just a call away. And trust me, you won't want to miss a second of this action. So lock your doors, turn off the lights, and maybe keep your phone handy, because tonight's stories are going to get intense.
I signed up to be a cop because I love this town. I was born and raised in this small town. I thought I'd seen everything here, that nothing could ever happen that would surprise me. I was wrong. The town was small, but the county was pretty big. There were plenty of roads that would go deep into the woods before crossing into another county. Growing up, we all told each other scary stories about what was lurking in the woods. One of the most talked about spots was the old church. Goes to show you how imaginative kids can be. The building was actually an old schoolhouse. I guess church sounds creepier. Most nights I was on, I'd make a point to drive by that old schoolhouse. It was close enough to town that teens could get to it. They'd be there at night doing things teenagers do when there are no adults around. The kids knew the deal. They would just clear out when I showed up. But tonight would be different. Did you see that?
No. I was playing Candy Crush, okay?
A guy just ran across the street in his underwear.
Dumb teens. Let's at least count to 10 before we get out. So he's got some time to put his pants on.
Come on. We took our time getting out of the car. We didn't want a group of teens running into town naked to try and avoid us. Hello? Hello? Behind the bush. I can see you in the bush. Do you need help finding your clothes?
There is blood all over him.
Are you bleeding? He charged at us the moment my flashlight reached his face. We were able to safely get him under control. Who was he? We thought he might have been a drifter that got sick from a bad batch of dope, but he was shaved clean everywhere, like it was done only hours earlier. Even though he had blood everywhere, we didn't see any injuries on him. He appeared deranged, but harmless. He didn't appear interested in us, he just kept snapping at the air. So we radioed for an ambulance. It came in record time. I was relieved. When the paramedics got out of the ambulance, I was surprised I didn't recognize them. They said they worked for the same company as the local guys, but normally worked 2 counties over. I was just glad they were there. They left as quick as they came. That's when I realized I had blood on me. Not much, but it was still gross. I radioed dispatch to see if I should stop at the local hospital to be safe. Dispatch had no idea what I was talking about. They said no call came in about a shaved crazy man covered in blood. They didn't know anything about an ambulance.
My dad was tough, but he ended up getting beaten by a power much greater than him. Cigarettes! If cigarettes could take out my dad, they can definitely take out a zombie. Here you go. Here you go. Wow, it worked. Cigarettes are effective at killing humans and zombies. Take that, Surgeon General.
I was home for Thanksgiving break. It was nice. I enjoyed seeing my family, but it was tough. I'd only been home for a few days, and I was already wishing to be back at my dorm, just hanging out and in control. I thought I'd take a break from my parents and their rules, and enjoy some time alone in the woods where I could unwind. It got dark fast, but that's happened before while unwinding. But I wasn't completely sure how to get home. I didn't have a signal where I was, but the GPS was still working. My phone's battery was low, so I left the flashlight off. I had no idea where I was, and the woods were creepy, but I figured if I was careful, I wouldn't need the flashlight as much as I'd need the GPS. Eventually, I could see a light ahead. A campfire, with some hunters around it. I didn't want anyone to see me because I was still high, so I walked to the left of the campfire, far enough away that they wouldn't notice me, but close enough that I could still use the light coming from the campfire. As I walked by, a breeze carried a strange mix of smells to me. It was a terrible mix of savory herbs and spices, and shit. I turned around to see what the hunters were cooking. That's when I realized they were not hunters. I stood there paralyzed while my brain tried to process what was happening. Were they Satanists? Cannibals? Was this some kind of human sacrifice? I started to slowly back up when one of them looked up and saw me. I took off. I could hear movement behind me, like a scrambling, but I made it to my parents' house. I told my parents. They could immediately tell I was high. They suspected I was making the whole thing up, trying to change the focus from me being high to something else. Eventually, the sheriff's department was called. They sent someone out to where I thought I was in the woods, and to the house. Sheriff Joe was a family friend. He listened to what I said and didn't say a thing about my bloodshot eyes. Before leaving, he recommended we all get some rest. He was going to go talk with the deputy that was sent to the woods, and they would get this sorted. As comforting as Sheriff Joe's words were, I wasn't able to sleep. The next day, I stood in my room until I heard Sheriff Joe show up. When Joe saw me, he put on a big smile and said they found nothing. My mom chimed in that it was so great that I was mistaken. But I wasn't mistaken. I knew I wasn't.
I'm not crazy!
My mom immediately apologizes to Sheriff Joe. He said it was fine. He had to be on his way anyways. Now, no one wants to get in trouble with the cops, but trust me, being in trouble with my mom could be worse. Cops give you your ticket or your day in court, it's all the same to them. They don't care. My mom, however, did care, and she would talk about things until she was convinced that you cared too. The second Joe left, she started. She needed to tell me all about the dangers of the devil's lettuce. After last night's admission, I knew it was coming. This had to be the Thanksgiving break from hell. She went on and on about side effects and the dangers and a bunch of other stuff. I'm pretty sure she had no idea what she was talking about. More than likely, it was the first thing she found on Google. I was exhausted. When she brought up hallucinations, something about that word was freeing. I had a trip. A bad trip. It happens. Something got mixed into the batch my guy sold me. It was dark. I was high. This is all just a mistake. And the best part was, I could prove it to myself. Sheriff Joe said nothing was there. I'll go to where I was that night. I saw it on the GPS. I'll go see nothing's there and be free.
George. George!
Hmm?
Will you talk to Reverend Brown? I'd like you to talk to Reverend Brown.
This was it. My way out. I'll go talk to the Rev. Tell my mom it helped. That I've changed, and I'll be off the hook. My mom rushed me to the Rev's house. You'd think he'd have better things to do with it being so close to Thanksgiving. Like giving out turkeys or something. I guess he knew how persistent my mom could be too. My plan to get out of here quickly was simple. Go in, say I was wrong, that it was my first time, that I'll never do it again, and don't bring up any crazy ritual hallucinations. Things were going well. I was ahead of schedule. 15 minutes in, and I could already sense that let's pray and you can go vibe. I had to be cool. Just hold his hand, pray, and visit Sheriff Joe. Are you okay, George? Yes. Then, why are you holding your breath? Before I could even answer, the door opened, and the other two freaks I saw walked in. I had to do something, say something, anything. You guys are making a mistake. My family knows Sheriff Joe, and he'll...
When the sheriff brought your son in, he was acting violent and erratic. We performed a tox screen and found several Class A narcotics in his system. It's best you let him rest right now. The excitement of seeing you might trigger another outburst. We are doing all that we can, but right now, his brain scans look like he will never talk again. I'm so sorry.
Take this! Whoa, that worked a little too well. This must be one of those fully automatic assault pillows.
This happened 2 years ago while I was living in New York. I was 19, and I was hanging out with my friends in the park one night. It was getting late, so we started heading home. Then my mom called, so I waved my friends on. They needed to take the train to get home, and I only lived 4 blocks away. So I sat down talking to my mom, and this guy comes over. I sort of noticed him, but wasn't really paying attention. I hung up with my mom and noticed this guy standing uncomfortably close to me. He He wasn't dressed bad, he was dressed like an old man. He was tall, extremely thin, his face was sunken in, and he had these intense green eyes. So I ask him, "Can I help you?" And he says,
"It's pretty dark. Are you afraid of the dark?"
I'm creeped out, but I don't want him to see it. So I say no and get up and walk away. I'm trying to move quickly without being obvious. When I was half a block from the park, I turned to check if I can still see him. I catch him following me, but he stopped walking when I looked at him. I started feeling very anxious and scared. This guy was stalking me. I didn't want him to see where I lived. I started running, hoping I could get away from him. I run around a corner, and I see a cop a little down the block. I feel relieved. I'll tell the cop I'm being followed, and maybe he can walk me home. I run over to the cop. It's the guy. It's the same guy that was stalking me. That can't be, I was thinking. This has to be a mistake. I was terrified. I couldn't breathe. How could it be him? But he had that same bony face, and those same freaky green eyes. I ran as fast as I could home. I was afraid to look back. I was afraid to look behind to see if he followed me. I made it home, locked the door, and called my mom. I told her I was stalked, and she told me to call the police. I couldn't. I was too afraid to, so I lied to her and said that I did, so she wouldn't bring it up again.
That's a wrap for Day 9, Horror Fam! I hope tonight's stories had you on the edge of your seat, wondering if it was time to call the police yourself. Tonight was all about facing the kind of fear that leaves you feeling helpless. But don't worry, we've got plenty more terror in store. Join us tomorrow for Day 10 as the countdown to Halloween continues. Until then, stay safe, stay spooky, and as always, take good care of yourselves.